Hey guys, welcome back to You Are Here. I'm your host, Danielle Ciani, and this is a podcast all about figuring it out together. And today, what we are figuring out is what do you do when you're transitioning out of friendships? You know, kind of a touchy subject. So, yes, this is something I feel like I have a lot of experience in because a lot of my friends, you meet them in high school, you meet them in college, you are going through so many formative life experiences together. And then as you go through those things, typically you extract different lessons, different pieces of your personality. Maybe you find a significant other, whatever it may be. But all those things really change you to your core. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think I found myself in a lot of conversations recently where people are saying, hey, I think the friends that I have kept since college or since high school are not fitting my life anymore. And it is a very jarring thing to go through and process because it's a season or it's like an era of just figuring out who you are now while also not really aligning with who they are anymore. And so you're trying to process a lot of things as you're also trying to decide how to go about this friendship. So today that's kind of what I want to explore. I think it'll be very helpful, hopefully, and you'll find someone, me, who has been there before, done that, and also still processing it currently. I think it's something that doesn't ever leave your life because people are always, I don't want to say filtering through because that makes it sound like I don't care about people. I love people. I love my friends. But I just think there's always going to be this ebb and flow of your relationships, and only you are in charge of how you process your own friendships, your own perspective, your own perception of those friendships, and also the boundaries you set. So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about. Disclaimer for any of the friends I have currently listening to this. I'm not talking about you. I don't want my friends to think like, oh, we're not friends anymore. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, okay, wait. Okay. I think that a lot of times when you're growing up, you're meeting new people and you're meeting a lot of, your core friends. They always end up being in very formative stages of life. Typically when you don't have anyone else and you kind of have to survive, high school is a great example. You get thrown into this new place, new building, oftentimes, and you're just trying to find like your squad of people that are going to make you feel comfortable and normal and a part of something, right? You meet these people and then you go to college, sometimes with them, sometimes without them. And then college is kind of the same thing. You get thrown into this new building, new city, sometimes new place. And again, you're back into survival mode, trying to find your family. I think that's something that is so interesting about made families as you get older and with your friends is you really are just trying to simulate a family unit again. And I think that's really beautiful. I think it speaks to the way that human beings are created, that we're always created to be a part of something, a unit, a team, something that makes you feel like you belong somewhere. And I'm very thankful that I've had that experience when I went to college. I loved all of my friends so much, and they really were like my family. They would come over all the time. My friends would come over and clean for me. Like, it was so sweet. We would eat together. We'd have tea together, have deep conversations, have silly conversations. I mean, it really was family. And they're some of the most fond memories I have of being in college. And I exclusively think about my friends. Every so often I'll be like, oh, that was a good lecture, or like whatever. But I always think about my friends and how they made it the best experience. But as I was saying though, you go into these places and you're really trying to simulate a family experience. And as you're doing that, obviously you're also learning so many things just by being in college, by being in this new place, new culture, because I went to college abroad. So you're doing all of those things, and all of these elements are forming you into something different. You're getting new perspectives because of the people that you're meeting. You're learning about yourself through the things that you're learning. You're picking up new hobbies. You're doing all these things, and eventually they shape you into someone different, and not different in a bad way, just different in a very real, normal human way. It's a formative experience, right? And then what becomes of you is sometimes is aligned with the people that have come with you. And so then you're faced with a very complicated situation of deciding whether you want these people in your life or you want these people more distanced. Sometimes that happens naturally through time, which is also a painful season to go through as well, to realize that people that became so familiar for you for all these years, through distance, through time, through changing of their eras, their relationships, there's really not much there to hold that relationship anymore. And that also is very painful because it's almost like there's nothing you could really do about that because they also, they're allowed to live their life. And sometimes that allowance of, just someone of that time, that space doesn't include you. And that hurts. That has hurt my feelings before as well. And so I think that's a very natural process. And sometimes you don't even realize it's happening until you pick up a conversation. You're like, oh, wait, there's actually nothing here anymore. And that sucks. But on the other hand, there's also the same thing can happen where time, distance, eras, relationships change, and you pick up the phone and it's like nothing ever changed. You're the complete same people. You have all the same stuff going on. You're invested. And that's awesome. That's the best when that happens. And I think it just speaks to sometimes the nature of the friend that you made, of just the way that they are willing to ride for you and care about you. And then it sometimes also speaks to just like the kind of relationship that you guys shared, that you had so much in common, that you really had those deep conversations. You connected on a different level than maybe other friends. But again, that's all speculation. Obviously, I don't know your interworkings of your friendships. I just know mine. So it's kind of what I'm speaking about. Well, not even kind of. That's exactly what I'm speaking about. But yeah, I think for me, the way I process things, I am a diagnose girly. Like I'm going to diagnose a situation, a friendship, the ending of a friendship. I'm going to trace my steps, Hansel and Gretel this mug. Okay. I'm going to go back through, I'm going to think about what caused that friendship to fizzle out or fall apart or fall out. Whatever happened, I'm going to solve it. And then hopefully get something out of that and figure out what's happening and how to either become better or to learn something about that person or me. Hopefully me. Because ultimately that's really all that you're left with when that happens naturally, So anyways, I think that's one way that friendships kind of make you, kind of find their way either as a fixture in your life or they kind of fizzle out. The other way that I think is the one that I actually have, the one that I really want to talk about is deciding that someone is just not right for your life anymore. And I think that one's almost more painful because you're looking at the person that knows so much about you, that you know so much about them. You've lived through so many things together, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much history there. And you essentially are the one putting your foot down and saying, I think I just tolerated a lot of bad things for so many years. And those things that I tolerated are not outweighing the good things about this person. And it's like vexing me now. And I think that's really, because how do you not feel like a bad person? When I've had to do that with friends before, I feel like a monster because it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, I've just decided I have had enough. We've had all these years together. We're best friends, et cetera, et cetera. It just sucks. It always has made me feel like a bad friend, bad person, whatever. Ultimately, though, I don't think that friendships should be a cross to bear. That is what I think. I don't think that you should be friends with someone and that should be an uphill battle. It should stress you out. It should make you nervous or anxious. Friendships should not contribute that to your life. And again, maybe that's me being a rat. I'm okay to accept that. But friendships are not a cross to bear. Friendships, I think, if you are a Christian, the Bible talks about a friend as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. Guess what? There's some friction, but there's not anxiety. There's not anything there. You know what I mean? And that's what makes a great friendship. That's what makes a friend to last the ages, I think. When you can argue, when you can speak your mind, and there's friction, but ultimately you end up becoming better at the end of whatever you're talking about. And sometimes what ends up happening is you're friends with people and you're trying to sharpen yourself. I think this is what happened to me before in the past is I'm always trying to think how am I going to become a better person because etc. Whatever happens in my life, how am I going to be better at the end of this? And I'm always thinking and challenging the way I think, my perspectives, my perception of things. I'm always trying to learn all of those things. And I remember getting in conversations with friends before, and it was like I was trying to sharpen myself, but they were like a piece of wood or something where I would go to ching, you know what I mean? Sharpen the knife and it would just like go straight through the wood, right? And or it would get stuck, and then it would cause the wrong kind of friction. Now I'm trying to pull this knife out this wood and I'm like stressed and all this stuff. And I think a lot of times that's essentially like I think how I've made the decision of, okay, I don't think this friend is helping me anymore. They're kind of hurting my growth. They're hurting my thought processes. They're like a burden in my life. And I think life is too short to be friends with people that make you feel that way. And also I think that maybe sometimes you're just not the friend they need at the end of the day. I'm a very straight to the point. I'll say it like it is, girl. Like, don't sugarcoat things to me, whatever. And sometimes people don't need that in their life and they don't want that in their life. And then that's causes even more friction where now they're trying to put their knife down and I'm the piece of wood. Do you see what I mean? And then now like I'm that point of anxiety or stress or frustration, whatever. And so I think all of those processes, all of those things, those moments when you're trying to think about your friendship almost objectively or even trying to assess it, how it makes you feel internally, I think that's something that has always helped me. Again, I think the process of friendships is so important to your life, and friends will always be in your life, whether they're deep friends or like shallow friends, work friends. Friends are always going to be important in your life. And I think it's also very important to be aware of how these friendships are affecting you. I think I have another episode about this, but I think it's called Your Friends Are Talking About You. And it's essentially that the people that you connect with in your life are communicating something about you, whether it's directly, like they're being rats and gossiping about you, or indirectly, where because you associate with them, the impression that other people have about you is positive or negative. Ultimately, like that sucks that people are going to do that to you, but it is a fact of life, unfortunately. So I think that it's important to take inventory of your life, of your friendships, of how they make you feel, of how you make them feel, and really decide. So, okay, now I've talked about the process, the pain, friends shouldn't be a burden, growing out of friendships, whatever. But now comes the do or die moment where you have to be like, okay, I don't want to be friends with this person anymore. What do I do? Especially if you have a lot of time and history with them. So let me tell you two stories. This happened to me twice, which I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the TikTok audio, the Doofenshmirtz the if this is so weird, I'm gonna misquote it, but it's something like if I had a penny for every time this happened, I'd have 2 pennies. But it's weird that it happened twice. That's what this moment is. But so essentially, I am a very, I think, chill person where if I decide I don't want to be your friend, which maybe this is not the best way to go about it, but I feel like this is what works for me. Um, I will also say in both of these scenarios, there was a lot of things that happened in between this friendships that already had distance and space naturally. So I didn't really have any need to see them face to face anymore because they moved away, whatever. So I didn't have to have that conversation anyways. So I felt like that was already happening. So I didn't, anyways, why am I just repeating myself? Okay. So what happened was I was friends with this girl for a very long time. It was kind of the same situation where I started going to this new place. I needed to make friends. I wanted to make friends, and we just had a lot in common, etc. Well, we become really good friends. She's always kind of like mean to me, which I don't really think anything of because this is like a me issue, but I do just think like it's fine. Like I can take it, obviously. Me and her became really good friends. She ended up moving away, and then I get a letter in the mail. I think when I'm in college. Yeah, when I'm in college, and it's from this crazy part of the world, and she is just basically saying like, "Oh, hated your guts our entire friendship, by the way." I don't think she apologized, if I remember correctly. Derek remembers better. Did she apologize? Okay. Well, anyways, she really didn't say anything. She was kind of like, I hate your guts. So I was like, oh, awesome. So yeah, obviously that was kind of, that friendship ended because of that reason. And it was just kind of, what it was. There was nothing, I never felt negatively really towards her at all. I was just kind of thinking, okay, people were telling me like, hey, this girl is like super negative and she does hate your guts. So that's kind of what the people were telling me. And I was like, yeah, sure, maybe, but like it's fine. She's not even here anymore. And it's kind of exactly like this is my issue, okay? So that one kind of fizzled out. Obviously, I got the answer later on. And then also when I'm in college, I get a text from like a childhood best friend that I had, and she sent this long, long message on something. And at this point, she had since blocked me on everything. It was very weird. I can't even remember what the falling out was about. I don't even think we had like an official one. I'm looking at Derek because he probably remembers. Anyways, I don't even remember what the falling out was initially, but she sent me a message and it was just essentially the same thing. Like, oh, I hated your guts our whole friendship. Sorry for anything, which was nice that I got an apology, but still kind of just crazy. Anyways, I say all that to say, I think the way I handled that, I think from their perspective, they needed some closure, I guess. I'm not really sure. It was all very ambiguous in both of these situations, but I share that to say, I think a lot of times, especially in friendships and the ending of friendships or whatever, I think you end up in a place where you like need to decide also if you need closure. And I personally don't need closure. I'm not that girl. If they felt like they needed to say something to close a chapter, so fair. Happy to read your letters and your messages and just say like, thanks, hope the best, like whatever. But I'm not that person. So if you need closure, maybe you need to do that. Maybe you need to apologize for some things. Maybe you need to write a letter. Hopefully you don't hate my guts, because that would be crazy. But anyways, so I think those are probably two of the craziest situations I've had. Other ones that I've made the decision have just kind of been more natural in the sense of I've just kind of let the time and the space communicate for me, essentially, which again, maybe that's not the best way to do it, but I don't need closure. So I just kind of wait. I'll follow up, I'll keep up, etc. But I really don't need that But if you need that, you should get that. I think a great way to navigate a conversation like that, if you do have the opportunity to sit across someone, I think I would try to understand like where they're coming from, probably get some more context about their behavior. If they're being very negative and this is like a recent thing, I feel like those could be symptoms of something else happening. And if you still care for this person, that's the underlying thing. If you still care about being friends with your friend, then you should ask questions. If you're done and you're just kind of like, it's like, I have no investment. I don't care about this person anymore. I'm tired. Okay, that's totally fine. That's when I would just take the distance vibe, you know? And I would just limit communication. I'd set boundaries. I really wouldn't like be invested in their life as you would if you were best friends with them. I would, but back to like a real conversation, I would ask them about, what's going on. I've noticed that they've been very negative lately, or distant or despondent, or whatever it may be. And then get some more context. And if they're not really sharing a lot of their life with you, I think that's a great sign that, maybe it's time to just like, okay, well, let me, if you even care, it's like okay, well, let me know if I can help you in any way. And if you don't care, then it's just like, okay, well, thanks for sharing what you shared. I'm like, wish you best of luck kind of vibes with that. And just kind of keep it professional, which is so lame. But I think there does become a point in your life when all relationships, and I've been thinking about this a lot, which has made me sad. But thinking about like dating specifically, how there's a very strange point in when you're dating, in the dating process, when you're talking to someone or whatever, or you go on a date and you decide you don't like them. And then it kind of just switches to this very eerie, professional kind of like, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed dinner. Like, please let me know. Like, I don't know. It gets so weird and, void of kind of humanity sometimes. And I think that's a very interesting aspect of all kinds of relationships and friendships. And, that makes me sad. But yeah, if there's, for me, I think if there's any way to keep it human, that's how I would handle it instead of keeping it so, I think even if I didn't care about the person anymore, I would probably just still say, if you need anything, like, I'm here for you. And, it is just a very unfortunate thing that you have to process as, a living person. But I think that as you grow up, I think you'll get better at recognizing those patterns of people. I'm so glad to say that I haven't had a friend send me a letter that they hate my guts in a long time. And all the friends I have in my life now are amazing, and I would not trade them for the entire world. And I think it's a really healthy thing to also experience friendships that you have to put the foot down and say you don't accept this anymore in your life, because that kind of attitude translates in a lot of other areas in your life where you also probably need the gumption to say no, you're not dealing with this anymore. Yeah. And you're not a bad person for saying no to certain friends or saying that you don't have space for them in your life anymore. I think it's just they're not the friend that you need anymore, and there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, there's so many avenues and so many things that make growing up, that make friendships so important and so like embedded into who you are. And I think saying no is sometimes the hardest thing like you can do for yourself. But yeah, I've had a time with my friendships. Oh, that's what I wanted to cover. I think a lot of times, especially in female friendships, based on the stories I shared earlier, there is a underlying sense of competition that I think is 100% misogyny. And I think in those friendships that I shared, I obviously can't speak for them. I can only speak for like the way I interpreted their behavior to my life. And I definitely retrospectively see that now. One of the first comments or compliments that I got from one of these friends was that my smile was so wide and they loved that. And like she hated that hers wasn't wide enough or something like that. And it was just very strange. That was one of the first things out of her mouth. And I have thought about that. So, like it's come back to haunt me because it's like, wow, the first thing that you recognize in me was something that you didn't have that you wish you had. It was just very strange and also very important. Again, I didn't realize this in the moment, but retrospectively, I think it's very, you know, formative, poignant, applicable to present life and to recognize those patterns of thought, and especially the women around you and the girls in your life and how they compliment you, what they say. I think the way women compliment is very telling oftentimes of the way that they perceive themselves. I think that's a prime example of what I just shared. But yeah, I think that as a girl, you have to be so aware of secure women and want those kind of women in your life. There's also been some dialogue on the internet about male-centered women and how male-centered women cannot be friends with like decentered male women or whatever, which is just buzzword. It essentially just means like girls who do everything to get male attention cannot really vibe and be friends with girls who could not give a rip about male attention, and not in a, like F the patriarchy kind of way, but just in like I'm just going to live my life. I don't really care what men think about me. And I think I've also had friends like that where they were definitely so about getting boyfriends and, dating and all these things, where I didn't really ever care and never did anything to impress guys. I just existed. And I mean, I'm still single, so it's clearly not working, but that's besides the point. But I didn't really care to do that, and I don't care to appeal to the male gaze, I suppose. And I think in all of that, we just couldn't understand each other to like a fundamental degree. I think there were things that they were annoyed that I did, but it was just because I didn't care. And not to say anything like I'm not like other girls, whatever. I'm just trying to say I think there is just like a fundamental misunderstanding of essentially how two people believe that they want to be perceived, how they want to dress, whatever. And ultimately, like, that's always going to lead to some kind of conflict. And I think that's definitely what happened in my previous friendships with girls who were like that. Was they just didn't get me and they didn't understand why I didn't want to do those things. And yeah, now though, I think I have made friends with incredible women who are so secure and who are so certain of themselves, who really also don't give a rip about what men think about them, which is awesome. And they are just, but they're like still completely, perfectly like feminine and beautiful and smart and wise. And like, they really don't let anything get to them. You know what I mean? And I just think it's so healthy and it really is so crazy. I also think a lot of the friendships that I had to say goodbye to were when I was in adolescence, which is typical for like everyone to just be dumb, me included. And, you learn or you don't learn and stay the same. So yeah, I think I've always been this way. I've always thought too much. I've always psychoanalyzed people. I've always thought too much. about everything. Anyways, but that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little bit about me. I hope you have a good time thinking through your friendships and hopefully setting boundaries that help you connect with people that maybe better suit your life, that better fit your life, that better understand you. And yeah, and thank you for sticking around. Please don't forget to subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Has a friend ever told you that they hate their guts? Because I would love to hear that story. And wait, did I say that right? Has a friend ever told you that they hate your guts? Yes. Yeah, leave a comment and follow youarehere.pod on, or youareherepod on Instagram. And then you can follow me on my personal at Danielle Ciani if you fancy some more of me. But thank you guys so much. Love you. Bye.